Joining us now with more, Texas Congressman Brandon Gill, Democratic strategist and pollster Doug Schoen, and political analyst May Cook. Well, Congressman Gill, would something like this ever pass in the United States Congress? I mean, can we put something like a wealth tax, not an income tax, a wealth tax to a vote so we can see which Democrats are nutty enough to actually support it?
I think a vote would certainly be interesting. You know, what's funny is that this is something that Governor Newsom opposed in his own state but supports nationwide. I think he intuitively knows that it's a terrible idea. It's horrible economic policy. But this is the direction that the Democrat Party is going. I think sometimes it's easy to look and say, you know, the fringe leftists are only in California or they're only in New York. They're not anywhere else. They're growing across the country, and those are the people who set the tone for the Democrat Party nationally. So this stuff is coming. I would love to see every Democrat in the House take a vote on this, knowing that they're either going to upset a really radically crazy base or they're going to vote for terrible policy.
Doug Schoen, you helped Bill Clinton get elected at a time when there was a Democratic Leadership Council with this Main Street more moderate Democratic group. They don't even exist. They disbanded years ago. I know that you're often very critical of members of your party for going way too far to the left, and people like Graham Plattner, you've called for him to step aside. What do you make of a serious contender for 2020 like Governor Newsom, the governor of the largest state in the country, sort of leaning into this brand of socialism, of confiscatory policy?
Kellyanne, it's the right question. My party, instead of developing an alternative agenda, as Bill Clinton did, you know, tough on crime, fiscal conservative, reining in welfare, is doing the opposite. It's appeasement of the far left, of the progressives, of the socialists, which underscores why Gavin Newsom is doing what he's doing with a wealth tax and why Senator Schumer said what he did about Democrats being a big tent, including progressives, socialists, and what few moderates still remain.
And Mahek, tell us and remind us why you are hurting the people who work for folks who are generating the wealth and the jobs and the capitalism and the innovation in our country when you try to put on top of the many taxes they already pay another tax, in this case, a quote, wealth tax.
Well, Kellyanne, this is really simple. It's because the Democrat Party lost their way. They learned nothing from their autopsy report. Their message today is still TDS, get Trump, Orange Man is bad. That's what I hear on the streets. So then you have a hijacking of the party. The communists have been here for decades, and they have realized there's an anger, a frustration that's deep in America. So let's use the front door of affordability, and then the back door is immediately tax the rich, get rid of ICE, make sure that we have Medicaid, Medicare, health care for all, and continue to dilute the American dream. And they're winning. It's not just California and New York. It's across our country. We're looking at 8 states now that are governing by communism. So it's only a matter of time before Hakeem Jeffries and others are diluted, because remember, you just need a small voting bloc in Congress to stop an agenda. Just ask Senator Thune that. I mean, they're holding Democrats hostage, and Democrats have paralysis today, and they're in denial because Hakeem Jeffries is saying we're united.
Yeah, I think that he does not understand the trouble he's in by a party that's no longer even interested in demography, it seems, having the first African-American speaker, or having enough women, or having enough Hispanics. They're about radical ideology now. Congressman Gill, President Trump's endorsement record is unblemished. Yeah, 2 gubernatorial candidates, I would say to them, you can't be a stiff and you can't whiff. But outside of those 2, flawless, completely unanimous in both the Senate endorsements, 16 for 16, 131 for 131 endorsements. What's the buzz on Capitol Hill about President Trump as the leader of the party when the Democrats are looking for a leader of their party?
Well, there's not any question about it. President Trump is the undisputed leader of the Republican Party. Not only that, President Trump is probably the most powerful person in American politics we've seen, definitely in modern American political history, if not in all of American political history. This is somebody that every single person in the Republican Party in Congress, whether you're a right-winger or whether you're a moderate, looks to for guidance, for not only for legislative guidance, but looks to be the leader, to be the person who sets the agenda, the person who we know that the president is with the people. And for that reason, we need to stick with him. So I don't think that there's any question on our side of the aisle who the leader is and who we need to be sticking with. The Democrats on the other side, of course, are in total disarray and have no leadership, no message, and no real vision that's compelling for the American people whatsoever.
And Doug, given the fact that President Trump is so dominant, fearless and peerless in this, and that the Democrats have tried everything they could to insult, impugn, investigate, impeach, and worse, President Trump and failed, how does the Democratic Party climb out of this? You don't have to tell me who the nominee would be in 2028, but should it be somebody from the left, the center? How do you read your party's prospects in the future ideologically?
Well, I would say first, the Democrats are going to run against the Republicans and against Trump on affordability because they don't have an agenda now. And who their nominee should be? It should be a moderate like Bill Clinton. The chance of that, I think, is very, very limited. I think tonight the candidate who's been most helped this week, prospective candidate, is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. There is a Bernie Sanders lane in the party, and I think she is well positioned to take advantage of the constituency she and Senator Sanders have helped build.
That's very scary to me, Mehek, because Doug is so smart and so accomplished.
Thank you.
I look at, there's no question that's scary to me because I look at AOC as sure, they're having a moment, but she's one of 10 members of Congress to vote against a resolution shortly after October 7th, 2023, to condemn Hamas. She and others like this Jamil, or whatever her name is, Prayogel, they all voted against it. And Jamal Bowman, who's gone, Al Green, who's gone. She's the radical of the radical. And I don't know how you become fresh and new twice. Is it enough to live online like she does and have a microphone in her face but no real power on committees to be the nominee?
Well, I don't think she's going to be the nominee, but AOC is having a moment. Make no mistake, even Gallup polling is showing that majority of Democrats today, 66%, believe in the socialism message. So AOC can win that base all she wants. But remember, 39% of Americans are rejecting socialism. And that's where we go back to what are we doing for the working man, the common man, the anger of affordability? And I'll tell you right now, once this Iran war wraps up, we're going to continue to see gas prices going down and Trump winning for the American people again.
Yeah, the gas prices are already going down, and I think that this housing bill is great. I think tackling health care, housing, along with gas and groceries is the full affordability structure. Well, Brandon and Doug and Mehek, thank you so much for joining.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.